Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining this session for Apps Portal Tools. I will first of all start by presenting myself. I'm Amira Beldjilali, a Power Platform Technical Architect at Avanade, and I have been working on Dynamics 365 customer engagement projects for 6 years. I worked on some projects on the portal, and I'm here today to present to you the Power Apps portal tools that I use every day and that I'm happy with. Don't hesitate to keep in touch on LinkedIn if you have questions even after the session. Well, first of all, thank you to all of our sponsors on this event and especially the organizers for the great job they did. I know that it was not really simple. Okay, the session will be organized as following. So first of all, I will be presented to you the objectives of this session, what I will be doing exactly, what are the tools that I will be presenting exactly. I will be showing to you quickly the portal management app using the model-driven app. After that, the Power Apps Portal Studio and what can we do there, what can we configure there, and how it's structured. Then the Portal Administration Center and what is really used for. After that, I will be passing to the Xram Toolbox plugins, and in this part, I will be just highlighting the different plugins that I use and I find that are useful from my viewpoint and based on my experience. After that, the monitoring and how can we monitor the Power Apps portal the Power Apps portals, and at the end, some other tools that might be useful for our projects. And for sure, we'll finish by questions. So the question is, what do I need for Power Apps portal tools? First of all, for every Power Apps portal project, I think that the first thing that we have to do is to configure the portal using the model-driven app. So it's the only way that we can start with. So we have to configure our authentication method, the entity forms, the entity list that we need to display, etc. Most of the time, this answer the requirements of the business. After that, depending on the requirements, the business requirements, we might need to add some additional developments, some custom code using jQuery, some custom templates using the liquid code, etc. And we need for sure to deploy that onto our portal. Then the first step is to beautify a little bit our portal and set the branding of our customer, check a little bit the look and feel because the out-of-the-box look and feel doesn't correspond all time to our business, to the business requirements. And then for sure we need to update the content, especially if you are using different languages. The fourth step is to deploy the updates from an environment into another because we will be for sure developing in the dev environment and we'll have to go into the testing environment and the production environment. And after that, we assume that we have deployed our portal in the production. So in this case, we need to monitor and manage our portal after the deployment, after the go live. And we need to check who is really using our portal. Is it really used by users? How much time they spent in the portal? Do they just open the homepage and then they leave? What are the most pages used, etc. So in the following part, I will be showing to you almost for each step the tools that I use to answer each step. So let's start by the configuration and the management using the model-driven app. As you might all know, when you install the Power Apps portal in your instance, in your environment, you get an app, a model-driven app installed automatically that is called the Portal Management. In this app, you will be able to configure and manage the platform and check what are different pages that you can put online, etc. So it has several sections. The first sections is the websites, so it will give you a global view concerning the management of the websites that are installed on the instance, because you can install multiple portals in your in the Dataverse instance. You can check from here what are your site markers, what are the site settings, and the different website bindings. The most important ones from my viewpoint is the site settings, because you have multiple site settings there. Some features are available just with checking site settings into true or false. So don't hesitate to get and check what are the site settings available when you need to develop a feature or configure something. Just as an example, you can, from the site settings, you can check whether your users are able to register on your website, on your portal, or no. So it's just settings that you check to true or false. The second section is the content. So here you can manage globally your content of the portal. You can create your entity forms, your entity lists. So what are the lists that you want to display? What is the form that you want to display? You can install some additional languages and manage the multi-language with in the portal. You can also check what are different web pages that you are using, whether you use a specific web template that you develop in your portal, or you use the out-of-the-box web pages with web templates already provided by Microsoft, or probably pages that point to ASPs and you cannot update them. So there are several options. Then the third section is the security. It's the most important one, I think, because when we publish a portal for users, we will have to manage with security what are different pages or access that we will provide to this to those users. So we can see that we have our contacts, who are our portal users. For each contact, we will have to assign one or multiple web roles, and for each web role, we need to configure the entity permissions. So what is the data that you can access to? Can you create the data or just update it, etc. We have also the web pages access, because for each web role, we need to specify what are the pages available for this user and what are the pages that are not available for that user. We have also a section for the knowledge base articles. It's really useful when you have a customer self-service portal, for example. So from here, you can update different articles, you can publish them, unpublish them, and there are several options there. Well, for the ads, it's really particular. It depends of your business need, whether you need that or no, but it's really simple to configure and to enable or disable if required. And after that, we have a section that is called administration. From my viewpoint, it's very interesting because it will allow you to enable the monitoring that will really help you to track how your portal is used and how are things going there after the go live. Okay, this was all about the model-driven app that we have directly when we install the portal. And then next, we pass to the Powerapps Portal Studio. Well, it's used mainly to beautify and update the content of our portal. Few months ago, we had the only way to update our portal content and our portal sections, let's say, was to pass by this page with the right panel that we have, and we just need to click on edit and update the content. It was not really user friendly. I can say that even developers was not really happy, were not really happy by using that, but it was the only way, whether we pass by here or we pass directly by the model-driven app by opening the pages, etc. But a few months ago, the good news is that a few months ago, Microsoft announced the Powerapps Studio, and it's really a user-friendly interface that will allow you to get a global view of your portal, and it will allow you to update the content directly from here. So which is like you are in the portal and you can immediately update your content. There are different sections in this in the Powerapps Portal Studio. So we have the comment bar that contains where you can create different pages, you can delete components, you can even open the website and synchronize the content, synchronize the configurations to get the latest configuration in the Dataverse to get it in the Portal Studio. And you can also clear the portal cache. It's a specific it's a specific feature, but because previously we had to go to a specific page in order to empty the cache, but using that, when you are updating your content, you can just immediately refresh that by clicking onto a button. We have a left panel also that will show to you different pages that you are using with the structure, with the navigation that you have implemented. You can add new components and you can also edit the templates, which is a great feature because previously the only way to update the templates was to pass by the model-driven app or some plugins extensions that you will be presenting later. We have the canvas, so it's our page that we are building currently, and we can update directly from here. We have the footer that will show the code editor, and it's somehow a place where you can also update your code directly from here without passing by the model-driven app. And a right panel to show what are properties, because sometimes you are just lost and you don't know what is this page, where it is used, and what is the name of this page. So you can get the information from the right panel from here. So that was all concerning the Powerapps Studio and what we can do in it. Let's now pass to the Portal Administration Center. So it's an administration center available only for global administrators. I think that I think that if you don't have this role, you will not have access to this administration center. There are several actions and options available there where you can, where as an administrator, you can manage your portal. So the first thing is that the portal details, so you can see what is the portal name, you can see the type of your portal, whether it's a trial and it will get deleted automatically in 30 days, or it's a production, so it will remain there as long as you didn't, as long as you decide to keep it there. There is a portal development status, so you can check whether it's just a development portal or it's a live version and people are using it there. We can have access also to the URL, because yes, sometimes we just forget what is the URL that we have used and whether we are using a custom domain or no. And we can check also from here the portal template that we are using, and we have the possibility to disable or enable again our portal. From the portal actions, there are several actions available for the administrators, so they can add a custom domain name to the portal. We can restart it if you are just deploying, or if it's really required based on the developments that we are doing there. We can update the Dynamics 365 URL and install some extensions like the project service automation and the feed service extension. For those two extensions, the only thing that we need to care about is the portal template that we do, because we can only install them when we have a partner portals. And for example, the self-customer portals, this feature will not be available. We can from here get the public key that will allow us to integrate our portal to some other features like chatbot or things like that. If you are using different languages, we might need to use the feature get latest metadata translations in order to retrieve all the translations that we have set in our Dataverse database. We can decide whether we need to display custom errors or details about our errors to the users that are who are using the portal. And with that, we can also enable the diagnosis loggings, because by default, the logs are not stored somewhere for the portal. So if your user gets an error and you haven't enabled this feature, you will not be able to get details about what happened exactly. So this feature, from my viewpoint, is very, very important when your portal is live. So you absolutely need to enable that in order to get logs. Otherwise, you will not be aware about what is happening there and why they are getting errors. It requires for sure the Azure Blob Storage resource in Azure in order to enable it. We can reset a portal. This feature will not erase the data from your Dataverse instance, but it will remove the web app behind that. You can change the URL of your portal if you decide to change it. And if you are deploying new features and you don't want your users to use the portal and get in there, you can enable the maintenance mode. With that, you can enable whether use an out-of-the-box page, or you create your own page and use it. As I mentioned before, we can set up a custom domain and the SSL certificate, so we can load them, manage them, delete them, and add new ones. We can also update the Dynamics 365 instance, and as I mentioned before, when we change that, this will not erase the data that you have configured in your previous environment. So you have to do it yourself using specific tools or manually. We can also integrate the SharePoint into our portal. The only thing from my viewpoint that we really need to take care of is the entity permissions, because it's not really doesn't work the same way between the Dataverse, the Powerapps portals, and the SharePoint. And for sure, it works only with the SharePoint Online. We can also set up the Power BI integration, so we can visualize the Power BI charts and dashboards and reports. And we have two ways to do that. We have also access to a portal checker that can be really helpful, especially when we are developing our portal, to check whether the performances are okay or no, whether all of our site markers are well configured or no, whether we have a large number of web file records, etc. So you might get an idea about what you need to improve in the portal. Administrator also can update the key from here. So as you might know, there is an app registered in the Azure Active Directory for the portal, and the token used for this app expires each 2 years. So administrator will receive a notification saying that the key will expire soon, and they have to renew it. So they can do it from here. They have to do it from here. And finally, we have a feature concerning the IP addresses. So if you need to put some restrictions by IP address for the portal, you can do it from here. Otherwise, if you don't have any restrictions, you can just keep it empty, and your portal will be available for everyone from everywhere. Okay, so that was all for the administration center. We covered all the options available and available there. Let's go now to the Xram Toolbox plugins. So I will be just, as I mentioned before, presenting the plugins that I have already used and that I found useful. So I will start by the portal code editor. Well, few days ago, it was the only way to update the code that we are setting in the web templates or the entity forms, the JavaScript that we are putting in the entity forms, or the liquid of our web templates and the content snippets. Before that, well, without using this extension, you will have to open the record in the CRM, in the Dataverse, sorry, and and update the code. It was not really helpful for developers because sometimes you just forget to click on save. Sometimes you just remove by error some lines of code and you cannot roll back them. So it was not really helpful for developers. But using this extension, we had a different view. So you can update your code, and when you decide to push it into the Dataverse, you just press the key, okay, I want to push my code into the instance, and then you can test it. So as a developer, I found it really interesting because you limit the risk of making errors in your code using that. So you don't push a wrong code that you don't want to send to your instance. But recently, a few days ago, I noticed that someone has published a Powerapps portal local development extension in the Visual Code. So if you are using that, you can share your experience, and if you don't, I think that you have to take a look because probably this will resolve a little bit our problems concerning pushing the code and updating the code in the Power Apps portal. The second extension is the portal records mover. So in the first one, I have developed, and the second question, when you have developed and you have finished all your development, you will for sure ask yourself, but how can I take that from my environment development, my development environment into the testing environments? As for the portal, we are talking about a configuration, so we are talking about the data and not just a solution that we can create and take our metadata. So this extension is very helpful because you can just check all the entities that you need. For example, you take entity forms and entity lists because you had done some configurations, and you don't need to take, for example, the portal commands because the portal commands are the data related to the portal in an environment itself and not really related to a configuration that you want to transfer from environment A to an environment B. The add value also of this extension is that it disables directly some plugins concern some portal plugins that you don't really need to enable while you are deploying. So it disables them at the first, and then once the deployment is okay, the extension itself will automatically activate and enable those plugin steps. The third extension is the Portal Site Settings Manager. So it's an extension that will give you a global overview on the different site settings that are available and the configuration that is set up in your portal. So you don't really need to open the records one by one or to pass by the advanced search to check what is the actual configuration of your environment, well, of your portal session. Um, the fourth extension, it's Portal Dependencies Checker. So sometimes we just need to to clean up some configuration in our portal to delete some entity forms, etc. And we don't really know whether this entity form or entity list has dependencies somewhere else. So using that, we can just check for each entity what are the forms used in that and what are the entity forms related to that and different dependencies with entity forms, and entity lists and views and attributes. So with this extension, if you need to clean up your portal, you can get a global view about different dependencies and take care of removing different dependencies between forms and your portal configuration before deleting them and discovering issues. The next one is the Powerapps Portal Web API Helper. So it's a recent extension that will allow you to, that will help you a lot when you need to use the web API in the portal. because to use this feature, we need to enable some site settings and some entity permissions. And this extension will help you to do that. And moreover, it will generate some code JavaScript snippets that you can use directly as a starting point when you need to start developing this feature and starting using that. So it's really helpful, especially as a starting point, because the Web API came recently, and this will accelerate the use of the Web API. The portal configuration compare. So this extension is helpful when we have two environments, two portal instances that don't work with the same way. So for example, you identify a configuration that works in your development environment and that doesn't work in your testing environment. So the first thing that you need to do is to check whether the two configurations are similar. What are the differences between the two configurations? So is it probably site settings that I have enabled in dev because I was developing and that I forgot to do in the testing environment, or something like that? So it's very helpful to identify the differences between a source environment and the target one. And finally, I will finish by the Portal Entity Permissions Manager. It's a new extension that I started using a few days ago because it was not available before. And it really allows you to get a global view about the entity permissions that you have in your portal, and especially the parental relationships between the two entity permissions. So if you have entity permissions with a global scope and another one with a parent scope, so you can get directly a clear view concerning the two, and you don't need to open the entity permissions one by one to check what are the relationships between the two, what is the scope of this entity, and what are the privileges available for these entity permissions. You can even delete them and add some other ones directly from here. Well, that was all for the Xram Toolbox plugins. Let's go now to the monitoring and the possible ways to monitor our Power Apps portal. So we have two main ways. Well, two out of the box ways to do the monitoring in our Power Apps portal. So on the left side, you can see the Azure App Insight, the traffic analysis. So it's a feature that you can enable in the administration center in the model-driven app, and it will allow you to see how your portal is used every day, how many people are using it, what are the most pages used by users, whether the users spend a lot of time on some pages and other ones no. And this it provides some dashboards that will allow you to say that, okay, my next feature, my next point that you need to improve in the portal is this one, because based on the statistics and the dashboards that I get from the Azure Insight, I noticed that people never go into this page because it's very hard to go into this page because the process is not optimized or things like that. For this feature, we need an Azure App Insight in the Azure in order to enable it. But it's really helpful. On the right side, you can see the portal logs. So by default, you don't have different logs for your portal. So when you have when you have a user who has some issues and who is facing issues and who has some errors appearing in the portal, you don't have any way to check the logs if you didn't enable this feature. So the only way to check what are the details concerning this error, what is happening there, what are the queries that are failing or things like that, is to go to configure this feature and to go into the Azure Blob Storage that you have configured and download the log file. Otherwise, it's really not possible, except if you try to imagine and reproduce and things like that. So the two features, from my viewpoint, are very important. But if we have a choice between the two to do, because both require some additional Azure resources, uh, I would say that the second one, the Power Apps portal logs, is the most important one, because if you cannot help your users when they are facing issues and when your portal is not working as it's supposed to do, you this will cause problems, I think. Well, for the second features, it's also really interesting, and it's really helpful, especially for business analysts, to identify points and things to improve in the portal, to improve the user experience for sure. And now we'll finish by some other tools that are also useful and that we can also use when we develop the Power Apps portal tool. The Power Apps portals. So we have the configuration migration tool. In the previous slides, I have mentioned that I use generally the Power Apps portal mover to move my data from an environment into another, so to deliver my configuration. But you can for sure use the configuration migration tool. You just need to specify what are the entities that you need to include and export your data and then import it again in your target environment. So this tool is also helpful when you want to deliver your configuration from your dev into your testing machine instance. Sorry. We have also the generate bootstrap themes, because the first question that we always face when we have Power Apps portals to develop is, okay, what can I do about the CSS? Do I need to update it from scratch, or can I just get a bootstrap file and put it in my environment and in my instance, and then I finalize or things like that? So yes, we can for sure download the bootstrap file. We just need to take care of the version, because I think that we don't really use the last version in the Power Apps portal. So this need to be checked in order to download the, the file that works with the portal version. And that really can accelerate the theming part of your portal. Well, that was all for our session. Thank you so much for being here. And do you have questions?